Hey, Matteo, how are
Hello.
you?
Hi, everybody.
We can
Hi,
see
Matt.
you. That's great. So, Raj gave an excellent presentation. So, he was kicking things off because he was there in the beginning of TAD Summit. So, again, best of luck in building out WUTAG and Unlead. So, Matteo, handing over to you. Really interested in your presentation. We're fully aligned on what you're going to present. So, I'm pleased you're going to be getting the message out to a broader audience.
Can you hear me, first of all? Can you hear
Yes,
me well?
loud and
Very good.
clear.
Okay, so I'm going to show my slide in a minute. I'd like to say thank you to Alain for having me today. My presentation will be nothing that you don't know, but maybe some logic around some few words, a perspective from outside US
Exactly.
on a topic which is very close to my heart. So first of all,
Excellent.
thanks again for having me. Small perspective
Hmm.
from from outside US about the trajectory of CPaaS
Yeah.
and the digital communication market. My title basically tells it all already, because I think the focus should be in winning the customer and solving the problem rather than
Yes.
aggressively pursuing any corner of the world and scaling businesses in the wrong way.
Yeah.
But let's go step by step. So first and foremost, I think as we all know, I mean, CPaaS players are suffering today.
Yeah.
They've built a lot of expectation in the past.
Yeah.
But okay, the past is the past, cannot be fixed. So we should be looking forward to the future. But I'm still waiting to see the plateau of productivity. So this is the most controversial slide probably of the day. From now on, I'll be very constructive. But before that, I want also to show that, from an investor perspective, CPaaS players are mixed bag, or
Mhm.
you can see the glass half full or half empty.
Yeah.
Why? So there is attractiveness for sure. I mean, especially if you look at a full stack CPaaS capable of building customer engagement or even CX, leveraging AI at scale thanks to the NLP quantum leap of Gen AI. And so you can think about, there is tremendous demand for digitalization, for integrating communication, for engagement. There is an opportunity for market consolidation because the more the value proposition is sophisticated, the less player will be out there for sure.
Yeah.
And we also see potentially, finally, the SaaS Holy Grail, for some of these businesses which were wrongly associated with SaaS model
Correct.
in the past years, right? When they realized afterwards that essentially they were routing SMS, valuation came down very easily. There is
Yeah.
also an interesting component of regulatory compliance, which built strong roots in local market and
Hmm.
can create what I call it some barriers,
Yes.
to heavy competition. But around the adoption of software, you can build stickiness. Of course, these are not capital intensive
Yeah.
businesses. You can definitely create and spin quite some positive dynamics. But on the other end, of course, I mean, if you look more at the players on the other side of the spectrum, those that continue to essentially do aggregation, you see plenty of risk, a crowded market, huge customer concentration,
Yeah.
regulatory complexity linked to the fundamental, SMS story.
Oh, yeah.
You see, in some cases that, investors are concerned that profitability is never a big concern today. Instead, it should be, because
Yes.
growing profitably is definitely more important than just growing.
Hmm.
And of course, there is some degree of economic sensitivity, but I think it impacts everybody at the same time. So I
Hmm.
think it's definitely half full or half empty in terms of perspective. Let's now take another small step. We know what's wrong with the CPaaS aggregation today. It's very blurred.
Yeah.
You guys in US have the spam or the scam.
Yeah.
In the rest of the world, we have seen an opacity, some business models that take advantage of opacity.
Yes.
And opacity, to a certain degree, is inherent to this kind of businesses, but they easily, spill over into practices which are not, I would call it, not very transparent, such as gray
Yes.
routes, which are still present even in
Yes.
developed markets such as
Exactly.
Europe. And then
Yeah.
the IT story. Uh, which
Which is
it's
artificially inflated traffic. So this
yes,
is
correct.
where,
Yes,
you
which is a
know,
structural, it's a byproduct of excessive commitment downstream, which also has tarnished the reputation and credibility of messaging.
yes,
This is an entirely system-related issue,
yes.
as thanks God, no impact on end users, but has impact on brands, as we know. I mean, if I recall well, I mean, there were an estimate of material amount of money on this one. But I don't want to go
Oh,
back
yeah.
to things we know. The
Well,
other point,
we
which is
need to
for me even
remind
more
people because
important,
the industry ignored Elon Musk when he was complaining about a $60 million theft from Twitter per year. So I think that was the public shaming. But I have to ask, did the industry respond to that public shaming?
yeah, I think it's been very shy answer response to that. But I think fundamentally for me, this is a problem that at the end will have to be addressed,
Yes.
and I think the largest sources of traffic are addressing that in a very clever way. And
Hmm.
the substitution of SMS from removing SMS from transactional
Yes.
CPaaS into more, alert and reminder, meaning that, the largest source of traffic are taking control of that. Just because they don't like volatility on price and quality, because it's not, these are applications sending messages. These are complex processes. They can certainly, the spend needs to be linked to business outcome, but
Yes.
also the quality needs to be very predictable. So, and then I think the other point, which is a little bit, a concern overall, is the lack of accountability in the chain,
Yes.
basically, right? And so that is a concern which can be addressed by shortening the chain. And indeed,
Hmm.
I think if we look at the sources of traffic and what they need actually predictable performance. They need
Yes.
visibility down to the network. I'm not just focusing here on messaging. I'm focusing on all the
Yeah.
communication channels,
Yeah.
including the good old telephony. They make a difference in
Yes.
some cases, especially for sensor-oriented, for UCaaS and for
Yeah.
CCaaS. And that visibility down to the network means, right, okay, that there is more accountability, and the higher the value add of the channel, and
Hmm.
the ability for the channel to close a transaction, to really convince the end user to make that business transaction, the flatter the aggregation model. And this is
Exactly.
important because it's easier through SMS to essentially have multiple layer of aggregation and eventually feeding the opacity of the model. But as soon as the added value is higher, you have a content element, you need more accountability. Predictability of performance is very important as well because the application needs to deliver the
Yes.
value, and then you need practically very few number of hubs into the chain.
Yeah.
And then there is the element which is super critical, certainly in many geographies, more and more is, concept of privacy, protection of end
Yes.
users, but also resilience to fraud. So all these trends are going to flatten the aggregation model. And it is crucial
Yeah.
because at the end, not every CPaaS is the same, as we
Hmm.
know. There are some of them which are doing a great job. They're focusing in, solving customer problem. They're really enabling application. They're providing software capabilities as well, more or less integrated with the company processes, and they build engagement process. So they are
Hmm.
very very close to the sources. They take accountability, and there are others that focusing just on aggregation. And
Yeah.
so we will see the value shifting definitely upstream, but there, those that can compete are probably very few on a global scale.
Hmm.
But also we will see also shift of value towards the downstream. Why? Because of the shortest path. So you rather
Yeah.
prefer to go straight into the network where the end user is.
Yeah.
That has a lot of consequences, as we know. And it's super important to structurally to build as much as possible coverage, especially on the new channels such as RCS. So these two focuses are different, of course. Not everybody can build those two focuses globally.
Hmm.
The choices need to be made. No player is global, that's we know from a coverage perspective. And
Yeah.
even more, when you build the value in the stack, no player can be global.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So, what is the accelerator? We have been reading a lot about the transformation that AI, Gen AI, is doing to the SaaS model, or is meant to do it. because a lot of activities, a lot of SaaS businesses which solve specific problem need to be rethought through because GenAI just brings more capabilities, brings more scale, and in some cases, could also undermine the incumbent on certain SaaS services.
Yeah.
Will we see the same for CPaaS? I am positive on it. I believe that GenAI can be an opportunity for CPaaS players, those that will develop into CX as a service. Because if you look at the adoption, this comes from the Stanford University Artificial Intelligence Index Report 2024. If you look at where the focus of the adoption of AI is very close to the core of business activity that concerns CPaaS. And so we will see, and we will be seeing every day, now being announced a new frontier model, but we see more and more that actually the best use of GenAI is to create systems which are very close to company processes, very close to enterprise data. And so we're building these capabilities. So these capabilities will help transforming the software landscape. So the question is, will CPaaS take advantage of that?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is probably yes. Some players out there are doing a very good job at this. We see more and more. I think, certainly a number of drivers where there is great focus, personalization of interaction. Like I said, machine learning has always been around. That
Yeah.
NLP to capture sentiment analysis, but also the large language model will bring all this incredible innovation to bear, and it will make possible for CPaaS to develop in customer CX as a service. It's fundamentally it is really important doing that at scale, which means creating the condition and the foundations for every work that has been done to deliver incremental positive contribution to the bottom line, right? That does not really stretch the operation. So all of this innovation needs to bring value bottom line. I am very, very much convinced that we could be seeing for some of the best CPaaS out there a momentum, a quantum leap, and where the focus will be indeed solving a problem, building value, because there is still plenty of room to grow in terms of penetration of communication into the enterprise market. And that is probably the best way rather than routing SMS.
Yeah, because that's very interesting. Because that really reflects some of the discussions we've had with Robert Viz in how he's transforming Bird
Yeah.
away from basically routing towards what he refers to as sort of next generation customer experience. So where his integration layer isn't an API, it's an app. Is
Oh,
how
no,
he
no.
looks at.
API is just the starting point.
Yeah,
Everybody can do API. The question is, I think to go next level up, people speak about CDP. Well, we know some players out there
yeah,
they have developed a business line around the CDP. I think
yeah.
it's not only CDP, it's really understanding customer problems, certainly, for instance, on the support side of the equations, on the customer support, customer care. CPaaS can be really transformational, and that is really fun, a fascinating challenge to
Hmm.
transform. Actually, CPaaS becomes the core digitalization of industries. And if you look at customer support, more than marketing automation, because that is probably a little bit more volatile as a business. It's not a
Yeah.
recurring business, whereas on the customer support and the customer engagement, on the virtual agents, you're building a recurring revenue stream because you deliver a recurring benefit to
Hmm.
customers, and that drives up valuations. So it's super important that the best CPaaS out there do that in a scalable manner. And there is an element which is also super critical in this is the localization of content, the capturing of the culture when you redesign process, the regulation, data residency, which is super critical, and go to market. Of course, you cannot just do that everywhere. You have to choose which market and try
Hmm.
to build a position in that market that can can give you some lasting presence. And you cannot just do
Exactly.
that in every country of the world,
No,
right?
but
So
and I think a
that
great
logic,
example is with Deutsche Telekom, with its CPaaS that it did jointly with Signalwire, in that its data is resident within Germany, and as a result, it was able to actually win a Twilio customer away. So yeah, I'm just supporting what you're saying, and I'm seeing surprisingly a large telco with its CPaaS winning customers because of the data residency issue. It's not off on AWS somewhere with unspecified location. It's actually within German borders. So again, it's just backing up what you're saying. It's just
yeah, that's true, Alan. And I think the data residency is super crucial, and it's an opportunity as well, because if we take it a step further,
mhm.
and maybe before that, but if we just to
Okay.
complete on your thoughts, so I think somebody that is driving one of the largest company by valuation these days says data sovereignty is the next infrastructure.
Yeah.
And this is super critical because if you think about customer engagement, you think about the amount of transactions that customer engagement deliver through an LLM, right?
Hmm.
For better targeting, better predictability. So that need to happen in an environment which is, regulatory safe, right? So
Yes.
that's the importance of data residency and the convergence of GenAI with transactional engines such as CPaaS. But before
Thank
we
you.
go there, I just maybe a couple of thoughts on network APIs as well. I think you've
Hmm.
seen a couple of announcements recently that are
Yeah.
interesting. I try to frame the problem in a 2 by 2 matrix because I believe it's simple and maybe effective. So you have two types of network APIs: transaction and session.
Hmm.
Transactions essentially, location,
Yeah.
number verification, identities, all of that. So
Yeah.
basically in that domain. Session is about building programming network like closer to the SaaS side, to the NAS, sorry. So building network predictable performance for specific applications, and why not for AI on a device to actually interact with the shortest latency with AI in the cloud, right? So that's a different transaction session. So where is the innovation here? I think it's clearly, I mean, on transaction oriented, we know the spin about this, right? So it's exposing capabilities that have been there. There's been a lot of work done for that.
Yeah.
The future will tell whether this exercise will be successful. The demand side, I think, given relative sides of the CPaaS, basically of the communication side versus the network side, you will see the larger sources of traffic are going to determine whether or not network PI will be successful. I mean,
Yeah.
they control the largest base of developers. They control in a way that they have access to the applications and the development of applications. So that nothing new to that on the transaction side. Certainly, some of those are frictionless. There will be a matter of price. There will be a matter of whether the supply side, meaning the global footprint, is aggregated or federated, right?
Hmm.
And the potential role of an aggregator in that. So it's a lot of questions to be answered, but I think it will shape up in the coming months, I would say, depending on the readiness of the JV that's been announced. But on the session based is where I would like to put a bit more focus
Okay.
because it is something new, of course, and I think people are underestimating how much AI is driving traffic already in mobile
Yeah.
networks, and that's something that probably is going to become pretty interesting going forward. Of course, on the supply side, there is a limited adoption of a GSA,
Yeah.
and that is going to be a bit of a drag. So
Yeah.
there is some novelty here. There's still many questions unanswered, but fundamentally, we're dealing with a huge gravity on the CPaaS side and something new on the network API side, and quite some dynamics that will unfold. I want to come back now to the topic of data sovereignty,
Yeah.
which for me is super crucial,
Yeah.
and it is in a way, the final consideration I can make to say how important it is for a CPaaS that wants really to go in a plateau of productivity and improved valuation to focus really on the market and to deliver concrete value to enterprise and do that with progressive adoption of software and do that by managing transaction data and which are of course user related data which can on one side feed and improve performance and make the inference of LLMs even more and with a better outcome and models that will be more aligned. But
Yeah,
that can be done, of course, into an environment which is data sovereign, in my view. And we will see more and more that is going to happen, that the hyperscaler in first instance, NVIDIA as well, which is an hyperscaler to be, or
yeah,
is already there, will basically bring this kind of capabilities within sovereign domain, I would say.
yeah,
And then I think the CPaaS players are really well positioned to continue to develop their software capabilities and to capture more and more value and to build more value for their customers. So again, I repeat, you cannot just do that everywhere. You have to make choices. There is no global play. There is a very strong local play
exactly.
anchored that delivers sustainable value. So these were my reflection around
Yeah.
the change of the industry and I hope it's helpful, at least to the audience.
No, absolutely. And I think this is very aligned to the presentation from last year from Uniphonic, where they were discussing creating local moats. That backs it up. I think in Uniphonic last year was sharing their local moats they were building. And then I think this year, the success that Deutsche Telekom achieved through, again, having, data residency within Germany. Oh, you're sharing again.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, it's no problem. There you go. Excellent. So definitely that backs up that data. One question I've got is, especially when we take more of a customer experience perspective, I mean, it's a very broad, mature market. I mean, we've got some leaders in customer experience, Salesforce, like Cognigy, Core AI, who built up strong vertical solutions. And as you rightly pointed out, we've seen a sort of push to looking at like passkeys, other channels like WhatsApp has been very successful in markets outside of North America. So there's multiple channels, and for them, these existing CX companies, it's relatively easy to add in other messaging channels, to even add in voice. We got later today, we'll be hearing from Dave Horton from Jambones, and he's acting almost like a voice provider, in terms of you take a platform, integrate it in, and from an open source engine, you've now added voice into your customer experience. So given that, I'm trying to understand, what's, how do CPaaS companies break into CX tech? Because they're coming from a transport perspective. It's, as you rightly pointed out at the beginning, it's messaging. That's where they focused. So how do they jump up into this sort of broader app layer, I guess, is my question.
Well, some of them are doing it already. Yeah. So I
Well,
think we
Twilio
could
struggles. I
estimate.
think it's fair to
Eh?
say that Twilio has tried for a number of years and it's struggled.
Well, I think we need to. I'm not going to comment on Twilio, but I think I've seen probably Twilio is still thinking to actually be very global in all what they do. I
Gotcha.
think I think I've seen situation very constructive situation where actually building interacting with customers and building definitely a complete engagement and bringing more software because we shouldn't forget that WhatsApps and RCS to come are controlled by hyperscalers. So
Yep.
they need to build something on top of that, right?
Yep.
So you cannot just I build an API on No, you need to go a little higher, and that some of them do it. And we should not
Okay.
also forget that you have to segment the market, right?
Yes.
You might have, the top end of the market where they are very well equipped with ITs, they would like to build, and then you have to also look at the regulations, right? Some
Yeah.
highly regulated environment, they require things on prem. You
Yes.
know, if you look at the market segmentation, you also understand there is no one size fits all. So
Yeah.
you cannot just say I apply no one size fits all across globally. So
Yeah.
meaning, but I think the question is how big a CPaaS player need to be valuable. I don't think it has to be big.
I agree.
It has to
100%.
create a recurring revenue with an outcome-based value that they can demonstrate. So
Understood.
that's my
Yeah.
contention point on this.
Excellent. I'm 100% behind you. I think regional, there's a lot of innovation that we're going to see
Yeah.
there.
Can I
You know,
jump in for a second,
go
Alan?
for it.
First of all, nobody's touched upon Matteo's incredible career, 24 years with Proximus and BICS.
Yeah.
I jumped on here. I have a doctor's appointment here at Matteo. I'm a little older. I go back to the days where Belgicom was the premier voice carrier in the USA. I mean, if we could get our hands, so I come from the calling card industry many, many years ago and then to messaging, and there was no better brand or no better quality. So for him to survive and flourish from Proximus to BICS CEO to now the success of where Proximus is, I don't think we've had a more accomplished guest on our show. Full stop. I don't think there's so. Matteo, I want to have the opportunity to invite you onto a show that I co-host with Alan. I like to say that I'm the star. It's called Truth and Telecoms, and then we do CAT Summit podcasts for companies. But I'm just enamored in your career, and I did some work from Belgicom many years ago on the voice fraud side of things with the calling card industry that I'm sure you remember. That whole in the USA, that insanity, but. I just want to celebrate your career. I'm a fan of how you've been able to navigate and bring BICS and Proximus to the level they are now. So I just want to give a hand as
Absolutely.
as a fan of somebody who is, I'm a wannabe Matteo type CEO. I'm a lower level, but to survive and to flourish through that organization with the politics and just the insanity of telecom. I got to tip my hat to you. So I'm just a fan, and I'd like to just ask you if you'd come on one of our shows at one time so I can get my hands on you.
Yeah. So first of all, I'm surviving also after Proximus. So
No,
I'm no
I'm sure
longer
you're
in the group.
surviving, but what I'm saying is you built this thing.
Yeah.
You built this thing for 24 years. What you've built, what you've accomplished, you see your fruits now bearing. And, I'd like to dive more into outside of Alan's constricted CAT Summit event today, which is amazing.
Sure.
And I just want to thank you for being, from my standpoint, our most accomplished guest. So I'm a fan. I have to jump. The honor is all mine.
Thank you.
Again, Matteo, thank you for excellent presentation and a critical point in what we will see is the regionalization of CPaaS that focus on, I mean, I'm a big fan of Uniphonic in creating that customer focus and the moat that makes it very difficult to break into. So again,
and the valuation multiples.
Absolutely. Again, Matteo, thank you so much.